Well, hello, it's Chef Andrea, and this is Q&A with Chef A. We are deep into our butter podcast pod. I've done one where we talked about salted versus unsalted, so take a look for that. And now I'm going to talk about another butter question that I get often, which is when we start talking about clarified butter and ghee. These two tend to come up in my cooking classes, obviously. Ghee, G-H-E-E, if you're not familiar, is a process of both clarifying and kind of toasting butter for use in typically Indian recipes. Clarifying butter is something that shows up when I'm doing really classic French techniques, typically. There are other times that it appears, but that's very common. I do a home chef series here. My home chef series I wrote in 2005, and I've really never changed it. It's 8 weeks of really classic, like if you go to a classic culinary institute, these are kind of the things they're going to really hone in on for your time there. So knife skills, stock making, sauce making, where we learn all 5 mother sauces, classic French cuisine style stuff. And week 3 is my sauce class. And so clarified butter shows up in that very French, typical, sort of traditional series. So clarified butter and ghee. The thing that's interesting to me, though, you guys, is that all of a sudden, maybe in the last 6 to 10 months, I started getting the same question over and over that actually I'd never been asked before, which is every time I ran a home chef series, and it just runs continuously throughout my calendar year, so they're just sort of constantly in rotation. And in my home chef series, week 3 specifically, when we would get talking about clarified butter, I started always getting the question, is clarified butter and ghee, are they the same thing? So finally this year, I guess this is 2021 right now, so maybe in the 2020 series, I said, hey, can somebody tell me why they're asking that question? Where is that coming from? Nobody's ever asked me that before, and now it's asked every time. Are clarified butter and ghee the same thing? And a woman in my class said, because they're selling ghee at the grocery store, and it says can be used in place of clarified butter on the jar. Well, there you go. That answers that. So are clarified butter and ghee the same thing? As usual, I have a short answer and I have a longer answer. Here's the short answer. No, they're not. There you go. Are you happy? Does that work? Why does the bottle of ghee tell you that it is clarified butter? I don't know, because that's not exactly correct. Let's talk about the process. Let's talk about how we get to both of them. Let's go with classic French clarified butter to begin with. With classic French clarified butter, we take standard butter, and you know from my salted versus unsalted podcast that I'm using salted butter. So I'll take a pound of salted butter and put it into a saucepan over very low heat, so low that sometimes I actually will just set that pan directly on the pilot light. So like if the burner is here and the pilot light's here, I'll actually move the pot up so it's just sitting directly on just the pilot light, but very low heat. And let that butter melt very, very slowly. When the butter melts, and this happens if you just put butter into a saute pan too, you'll see the same thing. When butter melts, what happens is it looks sort of foamy. This kind of foam appears on top. That is the water content that's located in that butter. So the water content tends to sort of foam up and come up to the surface of the butter. And for clarified butter, you'll very gently, using a spoon, just skim that white kind of foamy water content off of the butter fat. At the same time that water is rising to the surface and getting kind of foamy and waiting for you to skim it away, there are impurities in the butter and some of the milk solids, and they will have a tendency, they weigh more than the fat. So once we get the water up to the surface, then we have this nice layer of butter fat, and what will fall down below and just sit at the bottom of the saute pan is any impurities and some of the milk solids that are in there. And in the world of clarified butter, the idea is to get that water content, that foam, off of the top of it. Then using a clean spoon, you will ladle out that clear, rich butter fat and leave behind about a ½ inch in the bottom of your pan, and that is going to be those milk solids or any impurities that were in there. Leave that behind. And what you end up with is just this absolutely pure butter fat. And why would you do this? Well, for something that calls for medium-high to high heat cooking, butter's tricky, isn't it? You've done it before. I know you have, where you've put butter into a pan that you got preheated and it instantly went black on you. What burned when that happened were those impurities and some of those milk solids. That's what burned. So if you get that out of your product, you can actually use your butter, that pure butter fat that's now rid of water and rid of impurities and milk solids, and you can use that pure butter fat at a higher heat. So for example, shrimp scampi, right? That one always tends to start out at medium-high heat. And a lot of customers tell me they burn the butter, boom, right out of the box every time they start that recipe. So that would be one reason, is you want to use butter at a higher heat than you can do so without burning those milk solids if you haven't clarified it. Another reason that you would clarify butter is for making something, let's say, like a Hollandaise sauce. So for a Hollandaise sauce, I am going to be emulsifying egg yolks and clarified butter. And the only way those two can come together without breaking is to get the water out of it. But also I want a silky, smooth sauce at the end, so I want all those impurities and some of that, some of those milk solids out of there as well, right? To create this kind of very creamy, smooth textured, velvety textured sauce. So Hollandaise sauce, clarified butter, French. A little bit of higher heat cooking without it burning. Lots of recipes could call for that, and clarifying your butter will get you there. Do you always need to clarify butter? Like, whoa, is this it? Is this the answer? Should I have been clarifying butter every time I bought it from this point forward? Heck no. It's just not necessary if it's not called for. The truth is that most recipes that use butter as what you're sautéing in are going to be working at a medium heat anyway. They're working at a heat that's going to make that butter work. So it's a fair bit of labor, and there's a lot of wasted product. A pound of butter that I then clarify, I'll probably lose 4 ounces. Something like that. I do know that they sell clarified butter, but holy cow, that is expensive. Listen, I will definitely put my effort in and just make my own. The clarified butter that I've seen at my grocery store is $12. And it's also not a pound because they've done the same thing. They've lost some of the product in clarifying it. So it's $12 for, I think it's $12 for 12 ounces. So it's shy several ounces of a pound. And it's 4 times the cost of a pound of butter. So I would definitely recommend just clarifying your own butter. What is ghee? So let's talk about that real quick. Then we'll talk about, could they ever be interchangeable, and why that label on ghee says that it is. Ghee shows up when I do an Indian workshop here. And what we're doing with ghee is same starting process. We're going to take a pound of butter and put it in a saucepan, over very low heat. The same thing is going to happen. It's going to start to foam on top as all of the water content rises to the surface, and I'm going to scrape that off just like I did for my clarified butter, right? But here's a big difference. Now with my ghee, I've got that layer of butter fat, and some of those milk solids and impurities have fallen to the bottom of the saucepan. Here's the change. I'm going to up the heat from very low to medium, and I'm going to stand and stir. And what I'm going to do is actually toast all of those milk solids until they are a golden brown color. And this can take anywhere between maybe 12 and 20 minutes of just standing over medium to medium low heat and whisking gently as we work those milk solids into a toasted state. Now, I am going to turn this off and strain it through some cheesecloth. I am not going to keep those toasted milk solids in the butter fat. But 2 big things have changed here from clarified butter. One is that I have that sort of beurre noisette, that brown butter toastiness. I have that flavor profile. I've actually changed the flavor of this butter from just simple butter fat to very distinctly toasted butter fat. It's a distinct flavor, and it's a different flavor. Even if I strain it, guys, even if I run it through a cheesecloth and a fine strainer, I'm still going to have some level of graininess to it, a hint of it. Too much, in my opinion, to be used in something like a Hollandaise sauce that's looking for clarified butter that is just super purified and very silky. I think that using ghee in that place would create a graininess that you might pick up in your sauce. Also, the flavor would be completely off for a Hollandaise, technically speaking, as well. So are they interchangeable? They function very similarly in that I now can take that strained ghee and I can use it at medium to medium high heat. I can up the heat just like I could with my clarified butter fat the French way. But now we're talking, see, really different flavor profiles. So as a French chef, if you asked me if ghee and clarified butter were interchangeable, I'd be absolute in saying no, because I don't want the toasted flavor, and I would be concerned about having worked some of those impurities and milk fats as they toasted back into my final product. Even after straining, I can only get so much of that out. But if I'm an Indian chef, if I'm making a killer curry, and somebody asks me if they can just use clarified butter, I'm gonna say no, because your French style clarified butter doesn't have enough flavor for what I'm trying to do. I'm making a beautiful depth of flavor curry here, and I'm gonna start with this gorgeous toasted ghee, right? I need that. I'm looking for that as that base flavor profile. So are they interchangeable? Functionally speaking, both work at higher heat in a way that non-clarified butters will not work. But they are distinct, and they are distinct in their purposes and their functionality within various recipes. So there is the longer answer. Is clarified butter ghee? The answer is no. Are they interchangeable in recipes? I'm going to say as a general rule of thumb, no. Do be careful about it. Do they have similarities? They do. Now, I also want to show you this product real quick, and then we'll wrap this one up and keep it short. But this was interesting. I found this. I was trying to find the very one that my client says on it that it's you can exchange it for clarified butter. So I found this product at my grocery store. And down here, I suppose they're suggesting that this is clarified butter. The thing that confuses me about this jar is that if I truly clarified butter, I don't think that this white should be on top of this yellow. Clarified butter should just be this pure butter fat. This is probably water, and the water content shouldn't be in here anymore. We should have gotten rid of that in the clarifying process. I wondered to myself if this isn't water, if it's milk solids, but I have a feeling it's water content. Even if it were milk solids, that's even worse. You know why? Because if this were the milk solids, for this to be ghee, this should be brown. It should have been toasted. And also, it should be gone. If this were ghee, this should have been toasted, if it's milk solids, worked into this, changing this color to a much darker, richer color, strained, so that then when set at room temp, this sediment didn't appear. So I'm real unsure about what's actually in this jar. I mean, the label tells you what's in it. It says, let's see what, it's only one ingredient. It says clarified butter, which is milk and natural flavoring. I don't know what that means. This doesn't look clarified to me. That's what I'm here to tell you. So I will put up an image of some clarified butter that I do that sits and chills overnight. There might be on my clarified butter all this yellow and then a tiny, tiny little layer right here of just a hint of water content that I couldn't get out of it just with me and my big spoon. But there it is. Is clarified butter ghee? It is not. Is ghee clarified butter? It is not. So there's the quick reference. If you watch this and then make a hollandaise, use classic clarified butter techniques. If you watch this and are doing some great Indian cooking at home this weekend, go for the ghee. Also, by the way, this jar is 14 ounces and it was $13. So it's just shy of a pound. And it was 13 bucks. And 13 bucks, and I don't even know for sure that it's even what it says it is. So definitely don't buy them. Make your own. They're easy to do, so make your own. I'll get you a few photos up so you can take a look at those, but they're simple to do. It's an easy process. All right, guys. I hope that helps. Ghee, clarified butter, two different things, kind of two different purposes, two different functions. So there it is. I hope you guys are having a delicious day, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Q&A with Chef A.